Let me say good morning to all of you. And let me just introduce myself before I start talking about leadership principles that helped me to become a dean of students before the age of 30 and a vice president before the age of 35. So I grew up in Dallas, Texas, single parent home, graduated from the greatest high school in America, David W. Carter High School. Being facetious, but no, I'm really being for real. After high school, I was afforded the opportunity to go play college football in Arkansas at Ouachita Baptist University. And during that time, I actually accepted my call to ministry. From the summer of graduating high school until the time I arrived on campus as a young 18-year-old freshman at Ouachita Baptist, I actually preached my first sermon. So long story short, I only played a year of college ball. I really felt God called me to do something differently. And so I decided to come back home, and this is the kicker. I had a 1.6 GPA after my first year. So my goal, had I decided not to hang up the sneakers, my cleats, was to go to community college for the summer, come on back, ball out, and ultimately my goal was to ultimately go play Canadian Football League or make it to the pros. So God has other plans. And so I still go to community college route to get my GPA up, end up transferring to Dallas Baptist University, where I end up finishing, getting a bachelor's and master's degree, and hopefully this May, I'll be graduating from Anderson University Climate Divinity School with my doctorate of ministry degree in leadership, 21st century ministry, which is essentially a degree in leadership. But during all that time, as a youngster, and during my undergrad years, I went to work for the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights as a student intern. And that's where I fell in love with education. Watching our attorneys, as well as our case investigators dealing with Title IX, dealing with 504, Title VI, and every other thing you can think about. And so U.S. Department of Education actually is an enforcement office, and so there were times where, our attorneys would have to go to the 5-state region, as well as our caseworkers and investigators would have to go to a 5-state region to actually, interview people and do phone interviews and all of that, and just being around the work really made me fall in love with education. And then I had an opportunity to go and interview. I got called to my first church down in East Texas. Pastor is 24 years. I was 24 years old. Just called to my first church. And at the time, I was feeling, those last 2 years had prepared me, working for OCR, to go and do some work in higher education. I really wanted to go to higher education. So there was a college there in East Texas that I applied for. And by the time I got halfway back home to Dallas, I had gotten called and they offered me the position. Needless to say, in June of 2004, I started my higher education career as a coordinator of communities and schools. So I was a CIS coordinator. I did that for about a year. And then I moved from being a CIS coordinator to becoming a director at another institution of education and talent search. So all this is flowing with me. I grew up low income, my young life, and all these other things while I was at school. So I knew about a lot of the nonprofit sector and work and how it worked and all of that. And CIS is also a federal grant. And then I moved over to TRIO, which is Upward Bound and Education and Talent Search. So Education and Talent Search was my first director job, management job. I was 26 years old. And from there, I became a professor of religion. Then I went to head up being director of Upward Bound. Moving from Upward Bound to now my first Dean of Students job. Became Dean of Students at the age of 29. College there in Tyler, Texas, and then another institution there in Tyler, Texas. If you're on LinkedIn, you can see my background and all of that. But some of the things that I learned along the way Three things I want to share with you today. If you are trying to move to the next level, if you're grinding and it just seems as if nothing is working, let me encourage you just to keep grinding. I mean, there's nothing like good old-fashioned grinding and trusting the process. But some of the things I learned along the way that really helped me. You don't have to be a preacher to do these things. You don't have to be called a minister to do these things. You just have to have a plan and work your plan. And work your plan and work your plan. And some of the things you're going to be like, man, you know what, that makes sense, but duh, right? So the first thing, in a real sense, is character. Some leadership principles that I learned along the way that I just want to talk about for a little bit today is character, knowledge, and integrity. So character and knowledge we can really pair together. The reality is, character is what you do when no one is looking at you, okay, period. Can you be trusted? One of my mentors in higher education is Dr. Johnny Moore, who is the president at the Pierpont Community College in West Virginia. He's been my mentor for over 10 years now, and love him to death, but he's a man of integrity. He's a man of character. And connect with somebody who's older than you, who has been in the field that you're working in longer than you, but follow their example. He had character, he had integrity. I had some character and I had integrity. So it was a perfect, and we were both former athletes, so it was a match made in heaven. And so consequently, one of the things you must have if you're going to climb the ladder of success is character and integrity. Because here's the reality. Folks are going to check your background. Folks are going to call your references. I would never hire anybody on my staff if they had 1% questionable character. Man, we're dealing with millions of dollars in federal grants. We are dealing with not just millions of dollars in federal grants, but students' lives are on the line. And every day, I believe it is my mission as a higher education professional to leave it all out on the field. In other words, when I go to work, I'm there to serve those students from the time I get there until the time I leave. And the reality is most of them have my cell phone numbers. So I'm serving them 24/7. You cannot serve students if you lack integrity and if you lack character. If nobody can trust you, nobody's going to want to be around you. I can remember at one institution in Tyler, we founded the Black Student Association, which is the largest student association on campus. It was at the time that I was at this particular institution in Tyler, Texas. And the reality is, do you believe that a majority white administration would allow myself and some students and one of my colleagues to start an organization like this if they couldn't trust us? Think about it. Oh, I get First Amendment, I get freedom of speech and all of that, but then help fund us through student activity fee money every single year, and me take students to Washington, D.C., to New Orleans, to Grambling, to Memphis, to Atlanta, year in and year out, if they didn't trust us. If you cannot be trusted, you don't even need to worry about higher education. You need to go see a doctor and get your heart checked, or talk to whoever you believe in, your higher power. For me, it's Jesus, but whatever higher power is for you, you need to get your heart right, your mind right, because if you cannot be trusted, don't worry about climbing the ladder of success. You will not make it long at all, not just in higher education, but in any profession whatsoever. So character and integrity, first two things I wanted to talk about. But then I want to close today with something that you really need to take to heart, and that is knowledge. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whatever sphere of influence or whatever rank you're trying to climb, a ladder you're trying to climb, and whatever field you're in, have some character and integrity, but you need to know what you're talking about. The reason I became a dean by the time I was 29 is because, God dog it, I knew what I was talking about. I would sit before judicial panels. I would sit before vice presidents, executive vice presidents, and presidents, and I had to know what I was talking about. If they can't trust you, you need not worry about it. So say you do have the trust factor, and you do have the integrity factor, but if you don't know what you're talking about, you're not going to climb the ladder, friends. That's just point blank how it is. Know your content. If you're in admissions, you need to know what it means to admit a student. If you're in recruiting, you need to know how to recruit. You need to know something about marketing. If you're trying to move from a director to a dean, or a coordinator to a director, from a director to a dean, from a dean to a vice president or an associate VP, or however the structure of your hierarchy is at your place of employment, you need to know exactly what it takes to move from level 1 to level 2 to level 3, level 4. Study your HR policies. But you need to know something about the content in which you're trying to obtain, which means you got to go to professional development conferences. Sometimes if you're an institution that doesn't have the money, look, sometimes you may not need to go to Starbucks and get your medicine ball. You may not need to go to Burger King or whatever. Save that money, because you're trying to get somewhere in your career, which means if you're trying to climb the ladder, friends, you sometimes may have to fund the bill yourself. Nothing was going to stop me from getting where I was trying to go but me. Here's the reality. We oftentimes are guilty of getting in our own way, tripping over our own shoes. And I just wasn't going to have it. So if there was not money in the budget, guess what? I was going to find a way to get to D.C., to get to Orlando, to get to St. Pete Beach, Florida, wherever the conference was. I was going to spend my own money if I had to, because I needed all the knowledge I could get in order to make myself better at what I was doing in order to get to the next level. And it's the same thing going to happen to you. It's not going to be easy, not going to be peaches and creams, and don't expect everybody to pat you on the back, because when you're doing this, this is about you. This is your story. This is your life. And you got to have some knowledge. You got to know what you're talking about. You need to know what you're talking about. Read, my friends. Read, 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 and read. Get the education. You have to have the education, number one, to get to where you're trying to go. But after you get the education, listen, you're going to have to get some training in the area in which you're trying to go. My degrees are not in higher education. I have a Christian education master's degree. I've worked in majority secular institutions. I've worked at a few Christian institutions, but for the most part, no. But I've been a vice president at one community college and one private college, a dean of students at one community college, and a dean of students at one HBCU. Nobody handed me anything. But you have to know what you're talking about. And if people feel like you don't know what you're talking about, they will not hire you. So get your character in check. Make sure your integrity is on point. And make sure you know what you're talking about. Listen, this has been Damian Williams. I just want to share a few leadership principles about how I became a dean of students by the age of 29. And then a vice president by the age of 35. I want to help somebody. If you need to contact me, you can contact me at my email address. That's Damian, D-A-M-I-E-N, Williams, W-I-L-L-I-A-M-S. That's Damian Williams, 33, the number 33, at gmail.com. I love to talk to you. I love to rap with you. And just know you're not in this fight by yourself. These are just a few principles I'm giving today. The next few weeks, I'll give some more. So stay tuned and listen. Handle up, grind, character, integrity, and know what you're talking about. Peace.